First of all, thank you guys so much for coming to my seminar. My name is Ronaldo Woffman. I own a thing called Master School Dances. Basically, I teach DJs how to do awesome school dances. The actual company that I work with is called A Premier Entertainment. Thank you. And one of the big things that I've taken our company from just offering, I don't want to say the same as everybody else, because service-wise, I really believe we're different, but as a look in establishing your brand, the one thing that really has helped us is moving heads, which is rather ironic, because if you ever seen my videos about 5 or 6 years ago, I didn't use a lot of moving heads. I actually used a lot of scanners. So before I start, I want to go with what I call the moving head state of the union. Now, moving heads before, aka why I didn't use movers. Well, back in the day, they were relatively expensive and fragile. And I can tell you that because I got a whole junkyard of old moving heads that broke on us. They were featureless at the price point. You know, let's say I had $800–900 a moving head. I'm not going to get the features that I'm getting now. I'll be lucky if it, has prism or rotating gobos or anything like that. And they had a poor throw or angle. You know, we had some moving heads and it was a very narrow, tight beam, not what we wanted for a spot type effect. I'm here to say that 5–6 years later, I was wrong. I never thought I'd be using moving heads constantly. I now not only use them, we sell them to brides for even things that you normally wouldn't use a moving head for. Things such as a dance floor wash. You know, I love wash lighting, and I think floods are an important part of your foundation. But now we can create some really cool effects with a moving head, especially with the motorized focus that some moving heads offer, or some of the beautiful gobos. Like that right there is one of my absolute favorite gobos to use, where you can add some excitement on a dance floor without being too obvious or making a club effect. For weddings, not every wedding wants a club effect, which is fine. They want a nice, elegant effect. You can do that with moving heads. I have a bride coming up that she's like, I want to do a gobo. And I don't know if you guys get this. Does anybody here do gobo projection? Okay. How many times do you get a bride to ask you, can you put the gobo on the floor and then move it when we start dancing? Well, but back in the day, I couldn't do that with moving heads because it would be a tiny, tiny little gobo. Nowadays, it's completely different. I mean, yes, the prism's on, but even like, for example, the little guy right there, you can see the nice size of gobo and how bright it is, especially with all the lights on. But let's say you have a moving head that has motorized focus. The idea that we're going to do with this bride, I told her, like, well, here's what we're going to do. We can do where everybody walks in, we'll have a nice spotlight on the door, and we're just going to have your names. But then when you start dancing, those moving heads are going to go towards the center. They'll do a beautiful spin around the dance floor and, your wedding colors. But then we'll have a wedding gobo, a second gobo with both your names on the dance floor. As you go sit towards your head table, the moving heads will follow you. And that other moving head, because we're going to be using 5 of them, that 5th moving head will now have your actual initials, your monogram. So now not only is the moving head, going in different directions for the gobo, but we're doing 3 different gobos. Needless to say, there's a lot of money that she's paying just for that one extra moving head because it has 3 custom gobos. Nobody in my area has done that. And I don't know about your area, but have you guys ever heard of somebody using a moving head to do 3 different gobos with multiple scenes the entire time? And if you haven't, you can be the first. And that's something that can help your personal branding. This is what I get for using my Mac today. There we go. So again, moving heads now. This is why I bandwagon, and I mean that in a good way because I love my moving heads. They are much more affordable. Again, $800 maybe got me one moving head that sometimes worked. Years later now, the little small one over there, they're so affordable you can pick 2 or 3 of them up, or I can get into lighting design by using, like, for example, the one that's doing the big blue gobos in there. I can do some great high-end type features and not have to worry about selling my house or anything to be able to put a mortgage down for it. Again, sellable features are going to give you a better return of investment, and BFTB, which some of you may know stands for bang for the buck. Now here's what I use my moving heads for. I use them for dance floor effects. I use them for beautiful wall washes. I use them for gobo projections. If you get some with the replaceable gobos, you can use them for obviously custom gobo projection, architectural lighting. There is not one light out there that has this many uses. So again, there's some really cool things you can do with that. One of my DJs, and I mentioned this a couple of years back and I still want to do it, said, how come we don't use moving heads as uplighting? Right, let's pretend we have the moving heads all alongside the wall. This is a really expensive project, but this would be beautiful. So you got a whole bunch of little moving heads all along the wall. And then the bride and groom come in, right? And everybody turns their attention. And you see all the moving heads slowly tilt. So you just see how the whole room would eventually move over there. Again, super expensive project, but I want to do that one day. And of course, LED options. No longer do you need to borrow half of California's power to be able to power one moving head. The setup that you see here, we have 6 moving heads, 4 on the bottom, 2 at the top, a whole bunch of wash lighting, we have matrix type effects, we've got lasers, we have black lights, we have strobes, we have our floods, and I'm pulling about 17 amps total. That's been a big thing for us to grow. We have a wedding coming up, very limited power. In case you guys don't know Florida, we just discovered power in some areas, so that's pretty exciting. So the bride wants to have like the area just completely flooded with lighting all the way around. So we're gonna put a mover on a totem, like you see here. We're gonna, we have the new covers for the totem, so we're just gonna scrim it up a little bit. And then we're just gonna have the patterns with the prisms, and we can do the 3-facet or the 5-facet prisms and just flood the entire area on there. And of course, versatility with better throw and angle options. Again, with or without the prism, that's with the prism there, that's with the prism there, that's without the prism, you're still getting a nice wide throw. Of course, there are some moving heads that do not have a wide throw. They're made to be a really tight beam. So as you look at your moving heads, you want to ask yourself, what am I going to use these for? Do I need something that's versatile? Do I need something with an iris control? Think in the long term. And this is a mistake that I made. When I bought my scanners, I didn't think we were going to get into this. And if I had, I would have never gone into scanners to begin with. I would start forming ideas and a foundation, because even if I upgraded moving heads later on, the sales foundation would be there. And of course, the high-end features are more readily available. So again, you don't have to go broke to be able to get high-end design features. So the next part, of course, is choosing your weapon. There are multiple types of moving heads in there. So here's one of the different factors you may want to look at when you're looking at moving heads. First is MSD versus LED. And MSD does not stand for Master School Dances. I just clicked after years of talking about this. I actually talked to one of my good friends who was kind of helping me out with this, because I wanted to figure out what was the best way to explain this. And when you look at an MSD light, for example, the new 2R or the 5R lights, you see a really nice crisp beam. If you guys have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it looks like that beam could cut right through you. LEDs, they're bright, but the optics are slightly different. Each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. LED, you know, it saves power. It theoretically lasts longer. And I say theoretically because these 2R bulbs last forever. So why do the MSD fixtures still exist? I was asked this a couple days ago. With the way LED is, and these are all of the LED lights you're seeing, why do light bulbs, why do filaments, why do all this still exist? And in some cases, why do they output a tighter beam? So, this is a typical LED diode. Now, without getting too geeky on you, you don't have a single LED source. Like for example, when you have an MSD, you know, it's one light, one source, it's coming out of there. With an LED moving head, it has very advanced optics. These optics are a lot more complicated than it looks, because not only do they have to take that LED, it has to focus the light, it has to collect the light, and then focus it out there. With the MSD lamps, or any kind of the 5R, the 2R, it's a single source, so it's nice, crisp, and tight. Also, a single source LED with an equal output to an MSD would cost way more, and I mean way more in price, and they don't draw that much more power. The MSD, the 2R, the 5R, they draw such little power, you might as well be running MSD. Or excuse me, you might as well be running the LEDs either way. So again, the lamps 2R, 5R, they do last a long time. They're a little bit more robust than your old school halogen ones that if you accidentally shook while they were still hot, they would completely break out on you. So the durability is very nice. Is anybody here a multi-op? Okay, you guys know that your DJs will never treat your equipment the same way that you do. You'll get this text message, hey, did you know your light bounces? Well, thanks a lot. So it is kind of nice to be able to choose a moving head that I know will last DJ abuse. Next part of when you're choosing moving head, gobos. Now gobos are so important for two reasons. One, you want to find a moving head with good, attractive gobos. And I mean, for example, these are all the stock gobos that you see there. And yeah, you could switch out gobos, but let's say at $10 a gobo, let's say you have 4 to 6 moving heads, that's a few $100s just to get the gobos that you want. Now I'm not discouraging that, but I want the moving head to have nice, pretty gobos that I can use right away. The star gobo has been one of the popular ones, and I used this one even before I got these moving heads. When I had my Source 4s or my gobo projectors, I would always do stars. People love the star look. This came with it right away, so that kind of saved me a little bit. You also have glass versus steel. Now on this side here we have the steel gobos, and you guys are all familiar with that. But some moving heads not only hold glass gobos, but they come with them. Glass gobos are going to give you a nice, richer image, particularly those right there. If you guys see like the little circles and everything, there's no bridges, there's no gaps between each one. So you get a nice, clean image. Same thing with this one over here. The blue one's my absolute favorite, and I'll show you that in just a second while. I'll do a couple live demos. Rotation is also important. Can you rotate the gobo? Now right now you're seeing the index rotation. You guys should all be familiar with gobo rotation, but the gobos are moving very slowly in there, and of course they can move really fast. Now here's something really cool that I like to do, because this slide has motorized focus, and at first I thought, I don't need motorized focus, I can just get up there and focus it myself. But I use motorized focus as an effect. So again, you can have a really nice moving effect, and of course you can slow it down a little bit. So I've done stuff like that with a whole bunch of them in the prism effect in the middle of the dance floor. And then of course you can change the colors. Just because it's a glass gobo doesn't mean you can't sit there and tweak the colors. I had one wedding actually where they were doing like a desert type theme, and last minute she's like, man, I wish we could do a project the sun. So we just took that and we just really shot it out there, and it kind of looked like a sun. It was good enough, and she was absolutely happy with it. Of course, I can buy a sun gobo, put one on the second moving head, overlay it on top, and now we have a nice, neat type morphing effect. Let's go back over here. So again, that's the difference between glass versus steel, rotation, and then indexing. Now this is crucial. Let's say you have, because I had this problem a lot. Let's say that you're doing a gobo for the bride. You shoot it up there, but it's kind of tilted a little bit. And then you go ahead and you try adjusting it, but then it's too far. Gobo indexing literally allows you to just grab it by the degree angle. Like this one here, I use this one for gobo projection all the time. I'm like, oh, it's a little bit too crooked. And I just go in there, slowly switch to palette, which just basically means placeholder, as simple as I can put it in there. And I can make it straight, no matter how many times I move it, not a big deal. The motor, side note, have what we call feedback control, and that's something when you look at moving heads, you want to ask the manufacturer or the dealer, does it have feedback? That means that if you're doing them on the stage and somebody moves it out of the way, it's automatically going to reposition itself. Some of them have it, some of them don't have it. It may be important to you. If you never have them on a stage, it won't be important. For me it is, because we do have them on a stage quite a bit. Prism, I love prism effects, which, going back here, this is a grand entrance, all done with stock gobos. We have the spotlight in the center, and you see all those blue gobos right there, that's done with one moving head. The other two moving heads were ready to go, so when they come in, it would be a spotlight for them. So again, that's only done with two of them, and then the blue ones were rotating slowly around them. Prism, absolutely love prism, because particularly with the longer throw, or the wider throw that these moving heads have nowadays, it saves me money on having to bring extra lighting. The one on the left, we were doing a kind of like it was a 1980s. It was an 80s reunion, but they wanted it to look 80s/90s. So they love the 90s. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we projected some cool colors everywhere. We did the stars. We did some crazy patterns, and we switched them throughout the evening. Right over here, you will see on the bottom right. This was for a Sweet 16 that we did. And there's a beautiful gobo projection, and you can't actually cut a gobo that small nowadays, or you can get a glass one. And we had, with one gobo, with a prism, we had the prism covering the wall, and then we also had the last part of the prism covering some of the tables. So when they came in, the place was all beautiful. You had all those really nice patterns, but then it's time for her to come in. The whole room completely dims. Now, you guys, of course, if you guys have attended courses here before, you know, like for example, people like Todd Mitchum talk about passing the ball of attention, right? How to get the microphone or hold the microphone, so you're like, okay, well, let's turn our attention over here without saying over here. Well, think about it. You work with your lighting tech, and now you say, I want you to dim all the lights down and then put a spotlight on the door. You don't have to say anything. Dim the lights, spotlight on the floor. The lighting is now your co-MC, but you're now really creating something spectacular. And if you ever look at the high-end, theater houses or anybody that does any kind of large production, you don't have somebody say, look over there. The lights do that for you. So again, that's essentially what we did with this particular pattern on the bottom right. We used it to create a pattern, dim it down, spotlight, then back to pattern again. But then once they were done with eating and all that, they focused on the dance floor and they created, for the pun of it, pure lighting excitement.